Our next speaker is Marty Kausas, who is a software engineer and entrepreneur. We're going to be talking about cryptocurrencies. They've been making a lot of headlines, but what exactly are they? How do they work? Let's learn more with Marty.
Hi there, everyone. My name's Marty, and welcome to Cryptocurrency 101. I'm going to give you a quick intro and brief history of what are cryptocurrencies. So let's get started. So first off, who am I? My name's Marty Kausas. I'm actually a San Diego native. So I was born in Oceanside, a little north of here, went to elementary school in Mission Hills at Grant, went to middle school in Liberty Station at High Tech Middle, and actually Francis Parker right across from USD. When I graduated, I went and studied computer science at Purdue University, and then immediately came back to California and worked at big Silicon Valley tech companies like Airbnb and Yelp. It's also really exciting for me to be presenting in this lineup, as Irwin Jacobs was the opening speaker. He started Qualcomm, and I was actually an intern there my freshman year. So huge honor for me to be here speaking about this. These days, I'm the co-founder and CEO of MySafetyCall.com. MySafetyCall.com, which is a checkup call service for seniors, where you can sign up for daily calls. So let's say every day at 8 a.m. you want to get a call and know that someone's checking up on you. We can make that happen. So if you're interested in that, give us a call at 619-564-2840. So anyways, you may be wondering, what's this guy doing talking about cryptocurrencies? Back in 2017, I was studying abroad in Singapore, which is the financial hub of Southeast Asia. And two entrepreneurs walked into one of my classes looking for computer scientists. They said they wanted to get some people involved with a cryptocurrency company they were starting. And I came up after class. I thought it was really interesting. I didn't know much about the topic. I just heard some things about Bitcoin this, Bitcoin that, but had no idea what it actually was. Really soon, I started to start going to conferences and started helping them create the technology to actually run this business, and got really involved. So I know quite a bit about cryptocurrency these days. So what are the goals of this presentation? I want you to walk away knowing the historical context of why cryptocurrency exists in the first place. So why did it start? What was the impetus for why it was created in the first place? I hope you learn about what it actually is, and then usage in society today. So, what are the good use cases and how is it being used around the world? Since we only have around 20 to 25 minutes for the presentation, I'm not going to go into deep technical details, and I'll keep it pretty high level. So, some quick disclaimers. I'm not a financial advisor. Nor am I a professional investor, so don't take any advice from me. Really, I'm just going to share with you knowledge that I gained from working at this company in Singapore and my own personal research. I also do want to disclose that I do own cryptocurrencies and have since 2017. I've bought Bitcoin, Ether, and a joke coin called Dogecoin. So, to learn about why cryptocurrency was created in the first place, we actually have to rewind a little bit to the financial crisis of 2008. As we know, our financial institutions in the US failed us. It was a combination of debt problems and power and responsibility that was not owned up to. So people lost their jobs, companies collapsed, wealth was eliminated, and most of us didn't think twice about how we could change the system. But there was one person named Satoshi Nakamoto. It's not their real name. We actually don't know who Satoshi is. Published a paper called Bitcoin. And his idea here, and this came only 6 weeks after the financial crash, was to create a financial system that didn't rely on these big institutions that had failed us already. So what's the big idea? What was this vision? And what was the design of the system supposed to do? It was supposed to create a digital payment system that could operate without central control. And so, the big focus here is removing the responsibility and the trust that we have to give to these institutions like banks and processors and all these different systems, and take it away and build a system that operates on its own without moderators and interruption. So Bitcoin is actually a 100% digital payment system. So what that means is you no longer have bills or cash. There's no $5 bill, there's no $100 bill. It's just Bitcoins that are stored on the internet. And so you don't have denominations anymore. You can send 1.23 Bitcoin, you can send 0.002 Bitcoin, it doesn't matter. It's just a number that exists online. In order to access and use these cryptocurrencies, you have something akin to a username and password. These are called your keys, and they're typically stored in what's called a crypto wallet online. So what's the big idea here? You are effectively taking away central control from these different financial institutions. So Satoshi's big idea was, let's take power away from banks. Let's not have any moderators of this Bitcoin network who are going to regulate how it works. And let's make it an equitable solution for everyone. So all players have to play by the same rules. And they're able to send money to who they want without these institutions governing the system. So if we look at how the financial system has worked historically, and if I want to send money to someone else, it has to go through my bank. It then has to go through third parties. That could be a credit card processor like Visa or MasterCard or PayPal. And finally, it's going to end up in the bank account of another person. So there are a lot of institutions here that need to be trusted and a lot of different organizations with people making decisions. The alternative that Satoshi proposed with Bitcoin was that there would just be one self-governing network that didn't rely on us trusting all these different organizations. So if we look at the before, it's a lot more complicated, a lot more parties involved, and also people taking money off the top of every transaction to a trustless system with Bitcoin. So another way to think about this and look at it is a computer network. So if you have computers in this diagram that want to communicate with one another, there are institutions in between. So for one computer to talk to another, it has to go through this central source, these central organizations. In comparison, Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies allow people to communicate directly with the other computers they want to send money to. So you might be asking yourself, you've talked about getting rid of the organizations and the centralized control. Who's actually sending the money between people? And the answer is miners. Miners are just computers anyone can set up that send transactions between one another to make the system work. And so if you take one computer out, you can still send money between all the other computers. And no one is actually governing these transactions. So the rules are set in code, and there are no people saying you can do this or you cannot do that. So some other big key components are that Bitcoin is actually not country specific. So it's not tied to the US government, like the US dollar, or the euro to European countries. Bitcoin is a global idea, global currency, and can be used anywhere. Because there aren't centralized sources or financial institutions, it's much harder to regulate. So instead of cryptocurrency going from, it just goes person to person without having to go through regulated organizations. And also, there are only 21 million Bitcoins that will ever exist in the world. So unlike the US dollar, for example, which the government can print more and more of, there's a limited supply of this currency that will ever exist. And so it's not affected by inflation the same way. The last thing, and this is kind of nuanced, is that it's available 24/7. So imagine you want to wire money from one bank to another. The Bitcoin network, it doesn't have the same rules. It doesn't have the same restrictions. You can send money to anyone at any time, unlike banks, which will only operate during the work hours. So you might be asking yourself, is this a fad? What's the usage of Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies like? And it's actually dramatically increasing. This graph doesn't do a good job of explaining that because it's exponential on the y-axis, but there were hundreds of transactions when Bitcoin started being used, and now in 2021 there are over 500,000 transactions happening every single day. So now we get to one of my favorite parts of this presentation, which is how is Bitcoin and how are cryptocurrencies being used around the world? There are lots of different use cases, and I've just picked out a few here that are some of my favorite. So one is that it's increasing access to banking. So believe it or not, and we don't feel this as much in the US, but around 31% of the people, or a third of the entire global population, don't have access to banking tools. So imagine you are still using cash, you are storing your money at home, possibly under your bed, and you don't have credit cards to pay with at stores. So cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin give anyone with internet access and maybe a phone the ability to have an account, to exchange cryptocurrencies with other people, and have financial tools and models. This doesn't require any government regulation. It doesn't require any institutions in the area. So also, not all countries actually have a national currency. So you would think that US has the US dollar, and every other country has its own equivalent. But there are some that rely on other countries' currencies. So for example, El Salvador is actually the first country, or is a country who used to use only the US dollar. They didn't have their own currency. And they started to adopt now, in the past year, Bitcoin as their official currency that they're going to use. So not just the US dollar, but now Bitcoin as well. And a big reason they did this was because when they used the US dollar, the US government would print more, there would be inflation, and it would cause their entire purchasing power as a government and people to go down. And so I've listed a few other countries here that have the same issue: Ecuador, East Timor, Marshall Islands, Micronesia, Palau, and a few more. They all currently rely on the US dollar and have these same issues. So if it works well in El Salvador, which is kind of an experiment at this point, it's probably going to expand a lot more. So another interesting use case. Some of you might hold gold. A lot of people hold gold. And the quick explanation of this is if you hold cash instead, as the government prints more money and inflation happens, your purchasing power in your dollar becomes a lot less valuable. So what do? You try to invest that money, you buy stocks, you might buy bonds, or you might buy something that's going to retain its value, like gold. The reason a lot of people have chosen gold as a place to store their money and purchase instead of holding on to cash is because there's a limited supply of gold in the world. It's a limited resource. And so the value of this gold is expected to remain pretty stable over time, unlike the dollar, which is going to continue to lose value. Bitcoin, as I mentioned before, only has 21 million Bitcoins in existence, and that's hard-coded into the software. So there will only ever be 21 million Bitcoins in circulation. So people have now started to switch over from holding on to gold, which is physical and harder to store, to buying and holding on to Bitcoin or other equivalent cryptocurrencies. So another interesting example is protection from an unstable government or economy that you might be living in. So one case study is Venezuela. And in the past 5 years, their currency has experienced inflation rates of over 5 million%, which means your dollar or equivalent there is going to be worth nothing year over year. In fact, there are horror stories and jokes about how people started burning their money as a cheaper way than buying wood and using that, or buying coal. So if you were in the Venezuelan country while this was happening, you might say, hey, instead of just sitting here and watching my wealth disappear, I'm going to purchase and hold Bitcoin or a cryptocurrency, and that will stay more stable, hypothetically. Then another interesting historical example. Let's say you lived in a government that had a change of control. So you were living in a place before Soviet times. The Soviet government comes in and they want to centralize all the wealth in the country. Well, they can't take something away from you that they can't access. Because Bitcoin is digital money and is stored on a network that has no central controller, you need your password and username to access it. And so if the government can't force you to give that to them, then your money will be safe and your wealth will be safe from this new government. Another use case, and I saw this personally while I was in Singapore, was that a lot of foreign workers would come from countries like Malaysia or the Philippines to Singapore. And so they would come to this new country, this richer country, make more money, and then send it back to their families back home. And because they were sending small amounts, like hundreds or thousands of dollars, the wiring fee and the cost of converting that currency were actually fairly high. And so they would be losing a huge percentage of their income just sending their money between countries. And so Bitcoin transactions, although this isn't as true today, you can use them as a way to transfer money between countries at a much cheaper rate and also much faster. So, Bitcoin was only it was only the first popular cryptocurrency that came into existence, and actually now there are over 6,000 cryptocurrencies in circulation. There are more being created every day. Lots of them have evolved quite a bit from this original idea, but they retain the concept that it's in a decentralized network where there's a lack of central control, and it's all digital payment. So yeah, just to highlight some of what I hope you took away from this is the history of cryptocurrency. So it came about only 6 weeks after the financial crisis as a response to the issues that we had in that system. What are cryptocurrencies exactly? We learned that they are a digital payment method and that they lack centralized control. And we also learned that about some use cases in society today. So I hope that gave you a pretty good introduction to what cryptocurrencies are, especially on a higher level. And now we have some time for Q&A.
Thank you very much, Marty. What a fascinating world of crypto. Lots of questions are pouring in, so we have some time to take those and pose them to Marty and see what other light he can shed to us. Quite a few are coming about this question of why is Bitcoin limited only to 21 million? And secondarily, as usage expands and more people get familiar with it, doesn't that limit of 21 million become a problem?
Yeah, so that's a really great question. And it's funny because we actually will never know the answer to why Bitcoin is restricted to just 21 million Bitcoins. As I mentioned in the beginning, the founder, Satoshi Nakamoto, we still don't know who he is. He sent some emails and some newsletters at some point, and that's how we have some communication about what he developed, but he has remained completely anonymous this entire time. So people can only speculate and guess on why they only created 21 million Bitcoin and why they had that specific limit. As to why they put a limit at all, it was really the idea of preventing inflation. So one of the problems they did understand was that governments can constantly print more money, so this is a better place to store money and retain value than a traditional currency. So this is one of the problems they were trying to solve.
Thank you so much for that answer. So now we're getting questions about buying and selling cryptocurrency. And just really these questions center around the process of it. Where do you buy Bitcoin and how fast can you sell Bitcoin? And then in addition to this, how are people that are sent cryptocurrency get cash from it? So if you can describe a little bit of that nitty-gritty of the process of how that works.
Yeah, so you may have to repeat some of the questions there, but at least the first one. So how do you buy and sell Bitcoin and how would you want to get started? So there are lots of tools that exist these days, and one of the most popular is actually Coinbase.com. That's spelled coin like C-O-I-N and base.com. And they make it pretty simple. You just register like you would on any other account. You make a username and password. They kind of guide you through the process of being able to buy cryptocurrencies. And it's not just going to be only Bitcoin. You'll also be able to buy Ethereum or any of the other 6,000 cryptocurrencies that I mentioned. And how quickly can you actually buy and sell them? After you register an account, I believe you have to verify your identity because the government wants to know who holds onto how many cryptocurrencies, and they're trying to regulate it somehow. So there is some verification process, but after you're verified, you can buy and sell crypto very quickly.
So to repeat a little bit of that question for clarification, so if you are sent cryptocurrency, Can you instantly sell it? And how do you get cash? Like, how does that cash get from the sale of the cryptocurrency to you as the recipient?
Yeah, so how quickly can you actually get the cryptocurrency? It's going to depend on what tools you use. So if you use Coinbase.com, they actually have kind of a layer on top of the cryptocurrency network that makes it really efficient. And they've essentially made a marketplace. And the interesting thing here is, you may have heard about crypto or like Bitcoin skyrocketing in price and going up and down in this craziness. The reason that's happening is because this crypto behaves like a stock, where it's a supply and demand, or just like gold, right? How much, the more people that want to buy the Bitcoin or the crypto, the higher the value is going to increase, and the less people that want to buy, the lower the value is going to go. So it's really just this marketplace that exists, and so you trying to sell it, let's say try to sell it at a higher price than people are willing to pay for it, it might take a long time, or no one will ever buy your Bitcoin, but if you just try to sell it at whatever the market wants to buy it at, then you can sell it immediately.
I am loving just how many excellent questions are coming in. I hope we have time to get through every single one, so please keep posting your comments and your questions. Again, going to that process, explain to us, can you buy just about anything with Bitcoin, or are there only certain purchases that can be made by using Bitcoin or other crypto?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And actually, one of the hot topics and hot things in crypto today, we didn't have a chance to talk about the future of cryptocurrency, are these things called NFTs, or non-fungible tokens. You may have heard about these in the news, but essentially this idea that you can make digital purchases and on the network, the cryptocurrency network, you'll be able to verify and show someone, hey, this is the record of where I made that purchase, and it will exist on this network forever. So people, and it's kind of crazy. I don't know if I believe in it yet, but people are buying images and JPEGs and videos, which they can prove that they own for hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars even. So there are, they're calling them like digital Mona Lisas or crypto Mona Lisas. And so a lot of people are believing that this is a start of a new era where these are going to be highly valued digital art pieces that people will want to buy in the future. So there's a whole collection, I think, of 1,000 called CryptoPunks. And if I just showed you, it would just be like the top part of my face in a digital form, and people are buying them for $500,000 on average right now. And there are thousands and tens of thousands of these that exist. So yeah, I think there may have been a second part of your question, but you would have to remind me.
Yes. No, we're doing great with time, and we have lots of questions, so we'll just keep going. The next question is about, think about the United States, and is it legal? Are there some restrictions about what you can and cannot do with crypto, specifically in the United States? Are you aware of any of those?
Yeah, so this is really interesting, and different governments are embracing crypto in different ways. The whole idea is make it kind of make it so it's not easy to regulate because it's not going through these central sources. So we see, I'll get to the US part of the question in a moment, but we see El Salvador completely embracing Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. So they're trying to make it, they're just embracing it. They're not trying to shy away from it. While countries like China have actually completely banned cryptocurrency transactions. So it's now illegal to transact or even set up those mining computers that hold up the network in the country. When it comes to the US is treating crypto like a security. So pretty much the same rules apply to stocks. So if you buy Bitcoin at a certain price, let's say you buy it, well, right now it's at $60,000, believe it or not, one Bitcoin. So you probably only want to buy small amounts at a time. But if you buy it at, let's say, $60,000 and tomorrow it increases to $100,000, that's going to be, and you sell it, you're going to have to pay taxes on the profit that you make. And same way with stocks. So if you lost money on that investment, that could be tax deductible.
So the next question has to do with what you've been talking about, which is it's just like stock in a way because it fluctuates. And talk a little bit about why the fluctuating value is in cryptocurrency. Why does that occur? What potentially drives that?
Yeah, so this has a lot to do with the fact that it's really just a supply and demand thing. Whatever people are going to pay for it, is what the price is set at. And so the reason it fluctuates a lot is because people have just started really learning about it. Even though it was developed and the first version was released in 2009, it's kind of exploded, especially back when I was in Singapore in 2017. There have been kind of two waves of cryptocurrency. So 2017, 2018 was the first one where a lot of people learned about crypto, and it was this like get rich quick thing. So a lot of people started purchasing at the same time, and the price just was going really high. So when I learned about it in, let's say, September of 2017, the price of Bitcoin was around $1,000. 4 or 5 months later, it became $20,000, and then days later dropped to virtually nothing. And now we're back to where it's $60,000 per Bitcoin. So it's really just how many people are purchasing, how quickly, and then how many are selling at that same time, just like any other marketplace.
Wow, so much to learn here. Would you take a moment to share with us a few key terms? So you've mentioned miner. What is that exactly? And we know that people set up their own miners, and then there's mining farms that are big organizational facilities. Can you explain what that is and how that fits into the network of cryptocurrencies?
Yeah, so I talked a lot about removing agencies and institutions that hold up the traditional financial system. With Bitcoin, the question is who's actually making the transactions, or when I want to send someone crypto, who is actually making that go from one wallet to another, and what holds that up are these miners, and these are computer systems that are actually allowing these transactions to go through and basically writing line by line that this person sent this much money and another sent this much money. The reason people are actually building computers and setting up miners to hold up the Bitcoin network is because those miners are rewarded with transaction fees. So if I set up a miner at home, every time my miner helps make some Bitcoin go from one account to another, I will actually be rewarded with some amount of Bitcoin. So that's how the network sustains itself, are these transaction fees. And the difference between one miner and a group of miners is, some people might call a large set a mining farm.
So we have tons of questions, but not a lot of time. So let me just get quickly as much as I can in. The comment is, I've heard that crypto is used for hacking. Is that true?
So that's a great question. You may have heard a lot in the news about that. And the reason, so let's go with an example. In San Diego here, Sharp was hacked not too long ago. I don't think this may have been a crypto hack, it may have not. But what people will do is they will hack some sort of online system. So let's say it's Sharp's medical records. They'll hack it, lock it, so the Sharp can't get access to it, and the hackers will say, we are not going to release it until you send this amount of Bitcoin to this anonymous account. And so, what does Sharp do? They can't do anything about it, and so they will actually just send over that Bitcoin, and because it's hard to trace and hard to claw back, it has been successful for kind of nefarious activities like that.
Oh, I wish we had more time because the questions are pouring in and there's so many excellent ones. As with any presenter that you've heard today, feel free to reach out to the Oasis team and we can forward your questions and comments to the presenters. Thank you again, Marty. This is a new world and we've enjoyed learning with you. Thank you very much.